chances are you have no idea how your knee actually works. If you want to figure out all the things your knee can really do, check out the next video.
Let's go.
Hi, I'm Dr. Moses Bernard. I'm a chiropractor and mobility specialist, and I'm here at Critical Bench with Coach Tanya today, and we're here to talk about training the knee. Now, a lot of the time when people train the knee, they think of it as a simple hinge joint. A lot of the times in anatomy, we learn that the knee just straightens and bends. It just goes this way, just one plane. But that's not really the case. The knee is very similar to the elbow. So if you think of the elbow bends and straightens, but the elbow is also responsible for rotating the forearm. And the knee kind of works in the exact same way. The knee bends and straightens, but the knee also is the joint where rotation of the shin comes from. So we want to have the ability to control rotation of our shin, and we're going to get into that in just a second. So if we jump back to the elbow, if you imagine if I trained my biceps and I only ever did it at this plane, and I never trained it this way and I never trained it this way, there'd be a lot of training that I'm not taking advantage of. When it comes to the knee though, we tend to only train one angle. We always train our shin being along the same plane as our thigh. So if I were to draw a straight line through the middle of the thigh and through the middle of the shin, so that that line goes through the middle of the foot, most people, they do their lower body training at this angle. Whether it's squats, whether it's deadlifts, whether it's leg extensions, we tend to always do things with our knee in the middle of its range of motion. But guess what? If I rotate her shin outwards, you'll notice that her thigh is pointing one way, her foot's going somewhere differently. This is a different angle of the knee. So this is knee rotation in what we call external rotation. Conversely, if we go the opposite direction, again, the thigh hasn't moved, her foot is pointing inwards, we now have tibial internal rotation. So why is this important? Well, let's think about injuries. Let's think about what we see in sports when someone blows out an ACL or when someone blows out a meniscus. What does that injury look like every single time? Uncontrolled knee rotation. So we know that most knee injuries come from uncontrolled rotation this way, yet we never think about training rotation this way. So if we already know here's where injury happens, let's try to get strong there, okay? Now, what this doesn't mean is I want you to go out tomorrow and do a max effort squat with your knee in this position. Obviously not. But we do want to start to introduce the ability to control our shin into rotation. So the way we're going to do that is in this position, I want coach to imagine she's got a skewer running through the top of her knee and coming out the bottom of her heel. Okay? And what I want her to think about doing is controlling rotation of her shin back and forth. And what's going to happen if she doesn't have great control, the compensations to look out for, number one, is going to be when she tries to rotate her foot inwards, the whole leg collapses in, so that's her wanting to use her hip as her knee. Another compensation that you'll see is she'll want to lift the foot, and this is a lot more obvious if she's not wearing shoes, so you might see the toes start to do things. So going outwards, you'll see the same types of things. So as she goes outwards, you might see the whole foot wants to lift, you might see the whole thigh wants to rotate. So at first, to get better control and awareness of the knee, we want to learn how to find that rotation of the shin independent of hip helping and independent of foot and ankle helping. Once we have the ability to do that, we then may want to add that to some of our single joint leg exercises. So if she's doing some knee extensions, maybe we do a few reps, we give her a little bit of external rotation, and we do some of her knee extensions from there. Maybe we do a few sets, we give her a little bit of internal rotation, and we do a few sets from there. So we may start in neutral, we may go plus or minus 5 or 10 degrees. As we get more comfortable with that, we might start to go to our absolute end ranges so that we are training that knee not only in its neutral position, but at both extremes of the range of motion. So in addition to just training flexion extension, we also want to make sure we have the ability to train and control that rotational component, not just for leg development, but also for injury prevention. So we just talked about knee extension and making sure that we control rotation of the shin as we're going into knee extension. We also want to take a look at that when it comes to knee flexion. So in bring her leg this way, when most people think about doing their hamstring curls, we think of them like their leg extensions. We never think about how the shin rotates. So we tend to always do our hamstring curl with our shin at the exact same angle. But just like the bicep, we can control our rotation. With our shin, we can control our rotation as well. So we can have coach find full external rotation of the knee, so the plane of the foot is rotating towards you, and she can do sets of hamstring curls from this angle. We can also look at that with internal rotation, so we can take the entire shin and rotate it inwards. Now, again, as we rotate inwards, you can see she wants to sickle the foot inwards, so that's her brain wanting to use ankle stuff instead of knee stuff to find that. So we find a rotation of the shin inwards, and we can find flexion extension from there. And something that I'm feeling, you won't be able to see this on the camera, but she doesn't have as much flexibility of her knee going this way as she does going this way. So the range of motion might be a little different as well. So she might have one range here, she might have a different range here, she might have a different range here, and we want to make sure that we are aware of what that range is, but also make sure that we are training the full arc of that range of motion. So when it comes to hamstring curls, if you're doing, let's say, 3 sets, instead of doing all 3 sets at this angle in that neutral shin, maybe you do a set neutral, maybe you do a set from external tibial rotation, maybe you do a set from internal tibial rotation, and by doing so you're going to get a lot more development of the hamstrings, because the hamstrings, you have muscles on the outside and inside of your thigh that work independently based on how your shin is rotating. So if we always train at the one angle, you're not getting full hamstring development. We rotate the one way, we're attacking the outside a little bit more. We rotate the other way, we're attacking the inside a little bit more. So this gives us the ability to get way more out of our leg training. So we've talked about knee rotation in leg extension and in leg flexion. Now, what we haven't talked about yet is the full range of motion of the knee. And this is really important when it comes to full range of motion squats and getting the butt all the way to the ground, because having full knee flexion is a prerequisite to being able to squat all the way to the ground. So if I'm thinking about squatting all the way down, I want to make sure that my knee has the ability to bend so that my heel can get to my butt. If I don't have that flexibility, I'm not going to have the ability to squat all the way down. So all the coaching in the world isn't going to give you flexibility that you don't have. So if we look at Coach Tanya, if I bring her leg all the way in, so if I'm passively moving her there, she gets pretty close. So you can see that her heel is just within a couple inches of her butt on this one side. If we go to her opposite leg, since the squat is a bilateral movement, not quite as close. So she doesn't have quite as much flexibility on this side as she does on the other side. But there's more to the story. We don't want to only make sure that she has the passive flexibility to get there. We want to make sure she has the active strength to own that range of motion. So if I bring her to her end range, and I now let go. So coach, I'm going to have you try to keep your heel as close to your butt as possible. So I'm going to let go and try to have her stay there. And you notice it peels away a little bit. So now, this is the true range of motion that she has ownership of. So if we pay attention to this angle, we want to make sure that when she goes into a deep squat, she limits herself at this level. Because if she allows the weight to force her deeper than that, she's taking the weight and she's forcing her knee somewhere that it doesn't really know how to work, which is an invitation for not good things to happen. If we look at the opposite side, we pull this heel to her butt. Let's look at her passive range. So I pull her heel in. You can see it gets really close to her butt. I let go. You can see it's running away, but she's trying to keep it there. So her active control of her shin is this angle right here. So now, coach, I'm going to have you sit up. So I'm going to have you come to the front of the table. I'm going to have you come to the ground. So we're going to go kind of into a lunge position. So bring one of your legs forwards, bring your other knee to the ground. Perfect. So if we take a look at coach's knee, we saw that angle that we had control over. So I want you to kind of come down like that. So try to bring your heel as close to your butt as you can. Good. So this angle is pretty close to the angle that we saw on the table. So when coach is doing her lunges and she's doing her squats, this angle of shin with respect to thigh is going to be an angle that works for her. However, I'm going to have you bring both feet forwards. So I want you to think about doing like a really deep squat, okay?
Oh, okay.
Yep. So go like all the way down as deep as you can. Perfect. So I'm going to hold you. I want you to get as deep as you possibly can. So now you can see same thing. So that angle is pretty similar to what we saw on the table. Now with some people, they might find that in their variation of the deep squat, their butt gets all the way to their heel in the exercise. But if we were to do this thing on the table, it doesn't quite get there. So we want to make sure that our exercises that we're doing with weight are coupled with an ability of our joints to actually work and function in those positions. Coach knows what she's doing, so she's making sure that she's using the range that she's got on the table in the variations of her exercises. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you learned some new things about the knee and some ways to ensure that you're getting the absolute most benefit out of your leg training. If you liked the video, make sure you click like to subscribe and you check the pinned comment below for the Bodyweight Beast program. Again, I'm Dr. Moses Bernard. Hope to see you next time.